Welcome back to the Palace. I'm your host, Crown Vic, and if you are hearing a humming noise, that's because I have this. Well, I don't have this. I got an apartment underneath me. The workers are cleaning it, and they're making a lot of noise while doing it. So it's out of my hands, out of my control. Kind of like the media and Kanye West. As he says and puts it, that he's not out of control, he's just out of their control. The workers underneath me are not out of control, they're just out of my control. And I have no control over all the noise that you may or may not be hearing. But I am going to be reacting to Kanye West interviews, and this is just my initial reaction to them. If you watched my previous video on Kanye West, you'll know that I was a Kanye West fan growing up. It's not that I'm a Kanye West hater now. I'm more of a casual listener, if you will. So previously, before this video, or a couple of days before this video, I watched most of his interview on Drink Champs. I didn't watch all of it, probably like an hour, maybe 2 hours of the 3-hour interview. And my reaction to that is ultimately that Kanye West is going to be Kanye West. It's not that I think that he's crazy. I just think that he's a Gemini. And one thing about me, so in my channel, is in the beginning I called it the Ninth House channel. So it's originally supposed to be like a deep dive, not just in astrology, it's based off of astrology. So if you're not really an astrological person, then this is not a channel for you. Alright, I'm not gonna argue with you about whether astrology is real or not. I mean, that's just up to you, so it's up to you to study it for yourself and look into it. You can call it whatever you want to call it. Some people call it a pseudoscience, but I mean, those are usually people who only know about the sun sign. They don't know anything else about astrology. And so, if the only thing you know is the sun sign, and then you dismiss it just based off of that, I mean, it's up to you. But to me, what it sounds like, it's almost like you dismissing science. The entirety of science, because you believe in the Bible and science says dinosaurs existed, or skeletons and things like that, and you're saying that that's the work of Satan. Well, you haven't looked into science and really understood it enough to dismiss it. And that's kind of like my synopsis on astrology. Kanye West's astrological chart is right here, as you can see. Don't mind all of the tabs. Let me go ahead and focus this up a little bit. Sometimes I have a lot of tabs open, sometimes I don't. But let me fix this up. Man, this thing is annoying, hearing these people downstairs. I mean, it's just like they do everything they can to just annoy me sometimes. Sometimes the world is just annoying. Oh, look at that scary face. I was looking at some creepypasta. Alright, anyways, alright, so he got a Gemini Sun, Pisces Moon, Taurus Mercury, Taurus Venus, Taurus Mars, Jupiter Gemini, Saturn Leo. Alright, so right off the bat, and of course you have the Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, North Node, and the I don't even know how to pronounce that, Chiron. But I don't really know too much about Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, and the North and South Node. I think the Neptune is what you dream about. And Uranus, I can't remember what that was all about. But I think that's the opposite of Neptune. I'm not sure how that works. I forgot. But ultimately, right at the bat, what I see when I see this astrological chart, Sun and Gemini. So Kanye West comes across how he projects himself as a jack of all trades. So you see Kanye West, he's into music. He's into the fashion. He dipped his hand in technology. He wants to be president, kind of like Donald Trump. You know, Donald Trump, he's jack of all trades. And of course, when I look at these astrological chart, we're looking at the tropical chart. So if you really wanted to be like Bill Nye the Science Guy and dismiss astrology based on the degrees, say for example Gemini, Kanye West, he might actually, if you look at the astronomical chart, or where he was when he was born, he should be not a Gemini but actually a Taurus. Well, that's called Vedic astrology. So either way you put it, like it depends on what you study. Vedic astrology is going to be more accurate as far as the exact degrees of the planets than if you want to say, all right, so yeah, Kanye should actually be a Taurus based on astronomy of Bill Nye, as he said in one of his claims. Well, then you have to look at Vedic astrology, which I also study. But I look at both, you know. I look at both tropical, which is what I'm looking at right here, and I look at Vedic astrology. And in Vedic astrology, he would be not a Gemini, but he would be a Taurus sun, and he would be Aquarius moon, like me. Well, I'm Aquarius moon in Vedic astrology, but a moon in Pisces and tropical. So just based off of their chart, once again, jack of all trades, that's how he projects himself into the world. That's not how the world sees him per se, but that's how he projects himself into the world. You know, he's dipping his hands in many different things, and the world sees him based off of his rising sign. So rising sign is kind of like how the world, it's kind of like how you move through the world per se. So imagine, if you will, Monopoly, right? So that rising sign is actually the layout of the game. All right, so it's like you roll the dice. Where are you gonna go? All right, you move 2 places, and then you hit. Let's say you hit the bank, and then the bank gives you $200. You know, that's kind of like that. That's your rising sign. The placements, the houses, the house placements of your life, right? So, say for example, your sun is in the rising chart. It's in the first house. First house, which is your rising sign. Let's say he got a Gemini sun, but his rising sign is also in Gemini. So the world sees him through as a Gemini. It's very communicative, and he has many different avenues of streams of incomes, or different types of family and friends. And therefore, with that being said, you know, him being a sun in astrology, I'm sorry, this noise is really throwing me off a little bit. His sun is how he projects himself, how he reacts to that. Let's think about the Monopoly game again. Alright, so you have the layout, which is your rising sign. Now you have your statues, not your pawns, if you will. I forgot what you call those things. The actual pieces that you move, that's your sun sign, right? So is it a horse? Is it a person? Is it a car that you're moving? But that's pretty much your sun sign. All right, that's how you. That's pretty much like, all right. So my Gemini put me in this placement with a bunch of friends. Now how do I communicate? Not communicate, because that's your Mercury. But how do I, pretty much how do I see myself with these people? You know, it's like this is the face now. So how do I move with these people? You know, if you will, that makes sense. I'm trying to. It's pretty much just like I said, how you project yourself. So imagine your father telling you, for example, all right, son, you gotta be a mechanic, and you gotta be a good mechanic. And then now you gotta project yourself like a son, which the son represents the father, and now you gotta be like that mechanic, right? And so now everything that you go to school to be a mechanic, all right? So that's kind of like, what you want to do. You want to be a mechanic because your father is a mechanic and wants you to be a mechanic. So therefore, you be a mechanic, all right? So how exactly do you be a mechanic? It's up to your rising sign, all right? So say for example, if it's a Capricorn, you might go through the traditional placements, which is go to school to be a mechanic. But if it's Aquarius rising, then you might go to unorthodox ways to be a mechanic, right? So Aquarius is different. Like, he's a different sign. I want to do things differently my way. So you might meet a different mechanic that's not even your father, or somebody completely different. A mechanic who is not even qualified to be a mechanic, but he works as a mechanic on the side. But you like the way he does things. He operates machinery, and then you learn how to be a mechanic through that person. All right, so that's kind of like your rising and how your sun sign places. So that's kind of like I'm going too deep into this when I'm supposed to be watching the interview. Sorry, but this is just kind of like how I do my channel. Alright, so I'm kind of like a psychoanalyte. I like to psychoanalyze some stuff, and one of the things I like to do is kind of like looking at charts to kind of figure out people somewhat. And you got the moon sign, which is Pisces, like me. I'm a moon of Pisces. So Pisces moon is kind of like, you're very imaginative, right? Your moon sign is ultimately how you emotionally react to the world. And so, like, say for example, your father wants you to be a mechanic, but how do you feel about that? You know, that's your moon sign. So a Pisces would probably has more of a laissez-faire type of feeling about things. You know, one of the biggest things about what I mean by laissez-faire, that means you chill about a lot of stuff. You're not really, say for example, you're a Virgo, which is the opposite of Pisces. You're very analytical about things. You're like, things like the small things would get on your nerves, right? So say for example, he was a moon in Pisces. I mean, a Virgo in Pisces. It'll be small stuff that get on his nerves, like such as people's the way people communicate. You know, they might be speaking in a grammatically incorrect way. That might just emotionally tick you off, right? It throws you off emotionally. Like, oh, this person right here said ain't instead of we aren't, you know, instead of aren't. You know, just small, you know, the tidbits, the small stuff that a Virgo will notice. You know, that's the type of stuff a moon of Virgo will pick up versus a Pisces, more a relaxed type of stuff. But the thing about my Pisces moon is very imaginative, right? So one thing about Pisces is that we tend to pick up, you know, stuff on a spiritual level. You know, we kind of feel the vibe of stuff. We're very imaginative and putting ourselves. And one of the biggest thing about Pisces, we're good at putting ourselves in other people's shoes. Imagine ourselves from another person's perspective. And this is why Kanye West, in spite of him being rich and his focus on being rich, which is his, which explains his Taurus placements, he always puts his perspective through the eyes of many different people. You know, he puts his, he sees, for example, in one of his interviews, he says that, and also the interview that I'm about to watch, he talks about white men. He says white men are the most, you know, I forgot what the sound bite that was used, but pretty much he says that they're the ones who are being targeted the most, as far as, you know, them being the ones who can't really move and do what they want without being accused of being racist, sexist, this, that, and the other. So he's pretty much putting himself in their shoes in that way. In the same way he puts himself in the shoes of homeless people. So homeless people is like, in one of the situations he was in with one of his, I think Gap, he made one of his clothes to be in a bag instead. You had to get his Yeezy stuff out of a bag rather than off the rack, and you can't have no other employees help you out with it. You have to search for it yourself, because he wanted you to feel what it's like to be homeless. And it's like, alright, you know, that's kind of confusing. That kind of goes against his Taurus placement. So that's the paradox, if you will, because of that Pisces placement. So if he had a different moon placement, such as Taurus, he would not be thinking that way. He would not feel that way. That all is attributed to his moon placement. And Mercury, he's very Mercury and Taurus. When he communicates in a very practical way. So when Kanye West communicates, although it sounds crazy, he's using a lot of practical knowledge. He's talking about, you know, say for example, the last interview that I watched on Drink Champs, he He talks about the Jews and how he's jealous of how they operate. He wants that for the black people. That's very practical in a sense. To model, something that works. Model a systematic way of operating society based off a model or a people that has worked for a group of people, which is the Jewish people. And as he said, they're not really the Jewish people. They're more so the imitators of the real Hebrew Israelites, which are black people. And I want to point out that when he talks about Jews, it's not that I disagree with it. And I also want to point out this: there's a difference between Zionist Jews and Orthodox Jews. All right, Orthodox Jews are the Jews that don't want anything to do with Zionist Jews. All right, the Orthodox Jews are usually the ones with the long beards, the big hats. They're the ones who are usually doing some real good, in the world. So anytime you see like a Jew, don't just assume that Zionist Jews. Zionist Jews is really who he's talking about. Zionist Jews, I would even say that they're not very good people. Maybe not all of them, but from the ones that I know about and hear about, they're the ones behind the Palestinian bombings. They're the ones behind the Jewish media and all that stuff. That's the Zionist Jews. That's not the Orthodox Jews. So there's a difference between Zionist Jews and Orthodox Jews. The Zionist Jews are really the ones who are, I wouldn't say they're running the world, because that's really up. That's higher up. That's like shadow government type stuff. That's like the Koch brothers, right? It's kind of like the not Bilderberg, but that's kind of like, I forgot these families, but the Rothschilds. I forgot the name of this family. But there are families that you don't hear about. You think Elon Musk is rich. There are families who are trillionaires, and you just don't hear about them. So that's why when people be like, "Oh, I want Google to know my network," such as Lil Baby. Lil Baby felt, dissed by Google because they didn't have his network right. He's like, "I'm way richer than that." I'm like, shoot, if you're smart, you'll let them think what they think. You'll let them underestimate your wealth. You don't want people to know how much money you got. Why would you want that? Only people with a poverty mindset would want people to know how much they really are worth. Because the ones who are really who have old money and who has real wealth, they want you to think they're broke. You know what I'm saying? They don't want you to know that they're rich. I wouldn't want nobody knowing I'm rich if I was rich. If I was rich and I won the lottery tomorrow, you ain't gonna know about it. You gonna think I'm broke. Shoot. But yeah, there are families that are really trillionaires, but you don't hear about them. And they're the ones who are really running things. It's not the Jews. It's like let's say there's a hierarchy. The Jews are not at the top. They're more so a little ways down. Probably like fourth. But they're not even up there. If Kanye West really want to shake things up, he'll talk about the Koch brothers. He'll talk about the Rothschilds. He'll talk about the freaking shadow government. The people who are really behind the scenes. He'll talk about what Bill Cooper was talking about when he had his little show on the Pale Horse. Behold, that's a pale horse. Boy, if you really want to shake things up, you would talk about the Pale Horse. You'll talk about the ones who are really, really behind the show. And I don't think you will survive very long if you talked about the ones who really matter. See, the Jews, they're alright, but they don't run the show. They don't run the show. I'm talking about things. It goes so high, you probably think I'm talking about fiction. I'll go in conspiracies because I really can't prove this stuff. I just can point you to a certain direction, and you're gonna think I'm crazy when I start talking about this stuff. But I'm talking about it goes to reptilians, bro. It goes to Hollow Earth. You're gonna think I'm crazy talking about that. You be like, oh, we heard about the flat Earth theory, but you never heard of the Hollow Earth theory. Now, I may be wrong. I'm not saying this is genuine. I know it sounds crazy, but I'm just throwing stuff out there. But let me dial it back a little bit. All right. So when we talk about some real stuff, we talking about doggone the families that I mentioned. You want to talk about those guys? And also I want to talk about what Alex Jones once pointed out. I don't feel like looking it up right now. Shit, look it up. What am I doing? But he pointed out the Grove, the Bohemian Grove, Bohemian Grove. Shoot, I'm gonna pull up the doggone. Alright, Bohemian Grove. Alright, so that's pretty much a spot where a lot of so-called secret societies have met up. You know, and yeah, that's where a lot of these guys, they meet up and they do human rituals and stuff like that. You talking about secret societies, boy. Hey, Kanye talking about the Jews, boy. You talking about something that's tame compared to what's really out there. I'm gonna pull up the Hollow Earth. Let me see if I'm crazy on that. I just heard about it from this one guy back in the day. So Hollow Earth. If you ever heard of I cannot remember his name right now. I'm spelling the Hollow Earth wrong. The Hollow Earth. Man. So the theory of the Hollow Earth is that there's a second sun that's inside of the Earth. So what we've been taught in science class is that the Earth has crust, and then underneath the crust there's lava, and underneath, like in the center of Earth, there is something that's hotter than the sun. But according to this, Hollow Earth is actually there is no crust, there's no lava per se, but it's actually other land underneath it. Alright, so if you were to go to the North Pole or South Pole, at the center of it, which a lot of people can't go to, so if you were to, say for example, try to explore it yourself, you'll find that it's being guarded by this is according to theory. I never tried going to the North Pole myself or the South Pole, and I don't have plans to ever do that. But if you were to try to prove this theory wrong yourself, I mean, God be with you, you know. But you have to go to, you know, you'll find that it's guarded. All right, so it's government is guarded by some type of agency, and you can't go to the center of the North Pole or the South Pole. But according to this theory, if you go to the center, you'll find that there's a hole in the ground, and then in that hole in the ground, you'll find that there is another world inside our world, right? And then you'll find that it is a second sun in the center of that world, and that there is trees and there is dinosaurs. Alright, so that sounds crazy. I know that sounds crazy, and it might not be true. You know, it could be just another flat earth thing. So I'm not saying that it's real or not. This is just what I heard about, and I heard about crazier things. Let's get back to Kanye West. Alright, so Mercury. So he's very practical in his communication. What he loves to do, as he said in his Drink Champs interview, when he falls in love with a girl, he likes to buy her things. That's Taurus Venus. All right, and Mars. Anytime he does things, you know, like say for example, he posted something on Instagram, and he said he greeted someone. He said something along the lines of "Hello, Bi." You know, I'm not gonna say the entire word because of YouTube, but he ultimately just said something that is both disrespectful but a greeting at the same time, so it's questionable, and he decided to trademark it. So every time he does things, you know, there's always a bottom line to it, whether it is something practical, but it's definitely more money oriented, so he's very good at making money. That's why he's a billionaire, right? Problem is, his Jupiter is Gemini. Alright, so Jupiter is pretty much where you get your wisdom from. Who are your teachers? And so his teachers are usually his friends. So as you can see, when he was talking on Drink Champs, when he was talking with him, someone was pointing out to him better ways to communicate. And he was like, yo, this is why we need to communicate together, because you help me get better than where I am. You know, and this is not a bad thing, don't get me wrong, but you know, some people might see it as a little shallow, but it's not necessarily a bad thing, because as you can see, who he hangs around gives him a greater perspective. So if he's just hanging around average people, then he's gonna have an average mindset. But you hang around like the people like he hangs around, such as Anna Wintour and people in Drink Champs, or even Elon Musk, and all these people with power, he gets wisdom from those people. So in other words, to the people he hang around, he usually gets his wisdom from. All right, so he got Saturn and Leo. So in order for him to shine, he has to work really hard to do it. So he has to work really hard, such as anytime he tries to get on the stage or something. He even says this, when he would like Drake to write his raps, his life would be a lot easier, so on and so forth. That's just my psychoanalyzing Kanye. Alright, so since I talked about this so long, I'm not going to react to his interview too much, because I don't know how long I am on here. Oh shoot, because I can't really track my time. But I would just like react to about like a few minutes of Kanye in respected time. So let's see what Kanye has to say.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed for joining Piers Morgan Uncensored. My first question for you, I guess, is an obvious one. What do you hope to achieve from our conversation?
That right there, being uncensored. In American media, it's very censored. It feels like an episode of Black Mirror a lot of times. So I've put myself across the line, the point of no return, saying, hey, I know they're going to say whatever they want about me. When I bring up the truth, they're going to say, you didn't get enough sleep. It's because of your health. They're going to call me names for my truth. But these experiences that I'm telling you about are factually things that I've went through, and things that I refuse to keep going through, and things that I'm not going to let my children go through, and things that I'm not going to let my peers go through. No pun intended.
Well, look, we are most certainly uncensored on this show, and I want to give you the time and the platform to really explain yourself, because I think that sometimes sound bites about people, perhaps taken out of context sometimes, can create a very distorted view of what a person really thinks. What do you think, looking back over the last few weeks in particular, what do you think have been the biggest misconceptions about you?
Well, I think there's a left agenda to silence anyone that goes against the agenda. Let's go back to Trump running for office back in 2015. Everyone that was around me in my industry, in the entertainment industry, told me that my life would be over. I would be on the wrong side of history. I've even had threats to my life for wearing the Trump hat. And it even ended up in, destroying my family, and also making it where I have to raise my children differently, because I actually am a person that's classified as Black. I classify myself as Jew, but a person that's classified that had been given that title in America as Black, in America, that I'm supposed to stay in a block of a vote. You never heard the term white vote. So why is there a term Black vote? How is that okay? It sounds just as racist as a black drinking fountain. And my dad, called me and said, the thing that the left fear about Ye, or makes me the most dangerous, is I'm rich. And that's the point. Tupac told me back in the days, you had to get your money right, and then you go to war. So I'm going to war. I don't have endless resources. I only have honestly only maybe $120 million in my account. But what I'm not going to let happen is I'm not going to let my kids take over Yeezy someday and have a boardroom telling them what to do and talking behind their back. I'm not going to let that happen to my children. So I have to fight right now. And the other powerful icons in Black music, when they were at the top of the game, they didn't fight at that point. They were too afraid of losing whatever they had. So by the time they wanted to make a difference, by the time Bill Cosby wanted to buy NBC, he didn't have the Cosby Show at that time to be able to stand up when they wanted to literally throw him in jail, where they actually did throw him in jail. So people have to understand just the bravery. There's so many people everywhere. I know everyone can relate to being afraid to say what you're going to feel because you feel like you're going to, you're going to lose something. So whether you agree with me or not, I believe people are going to feel the fact that someone is brave enough to say something. Every day I do 5 things that people have been historically killed for. Every day. And it's just, I want to prove, first of all, I am Jew also. The 12 lost tribes of Hebrew. Do the math. Do your research on it. We have got our culture ripped from us and then told we were just simply void of color, which is another definition for black. But if we knew we were a culture and knew we were a people, the way the Jewish people know, then we wouldn't abort ourselves. We wouldn't shoot each other dead in the streets and then rap about it. We wouldn't brag about, having sex with each other's wives. We would keep our families together and we would do business together. The most dangerous place for a black person in America is actually in our mother's stomachs, because 50% of black deaths a year in America is abortion currently. I mean, I can keep going, but I want to make it, ask me questions.
I don't want to jump in too much because.
All right, so I just want to stop it right here, because he pretty much made, all the points that he made. It's not something I disagree with. I agree with, 100% with everything he just said right there. I do think that he's right about the vote. You shouldn't have to just vote Democrat just because you're black. It shouldn't be a black vote. It should be just the voters. Whether the voters decide to vote Democrat or Republican, one thing for sure, there is a kind of groupthink, and I do agree with this. There is kind of a expectation that black people should vote Democrat just because they're Democrat. It got to the point where it's so bad that Joe Biden once said on Breakfast Club that if you don't vote for me, you're not black. Huh, Joe Biden? Sleepy Joe. If I recall correctly, at one point, correct me if I'm wrong, but he led a lot of incarcerations, or he called, I'm not sure if it was, I think it was Hillary Clinton that talked about the super predators when she talked about the crack epidemic in California. She called them, I can't remember exactly what the whole thing, I'm foggy about the whole situation, but they seem to kind of lump a lot of the ones who are suffering from this crack epidemic into this type of target. Kind of put a target over their head as far as them being super predators, them being monsters, but them being the victims, them being the ones who are out of control. We had to do something about it, and it's just like, you do that when you see this crack epidemic. By the way, the CIA laced the water supply with crack, and that therefore got a lot of those people in certain neighborhoods, targeted neighborhoods, got them on crack in the first place because of it's being targeted, in your water supply. And this is true, this is not just with the water supply, but if I notice this in my own hometown, that oftentimes the food on the better side of town is better than the worst, the food that's brought to the worst side of town. For example, if I were to go on, I'm in Jacksonville, so Jacksonville has more of the money on the south side than on the north side, depending on what side of the north side, of course. But if I were to go on the north side and I were to get some crackers, right, some chips, it doesn't taste as good as the ones on the south side, and that kind of like goes back to my point about the CIA and stuff like that. But when let's say the heroin epidemic hits white America, it's a epidemic. It's something that's affecting us all. So when it's affecting black people, it's super predators, according to Hillary Clinton. But then when it affects white people, it's affecting us all. This is the Democrats, and this is something similar also to what Malcolm X once said. He said that he's not necessarily a Democrat or a Republican, because, and this is a great analogy to what to sum up my point about Democrats. He says that the Republicans are more like the outright wolves. All right, so they're just right up there telling you that they don't like you. They're like the wolves, and we're like the sheep. So we kind of scammer away. We know what to expect from the wolves versus the sheep. Versus the wolf that's in sheep clothing, or the fox. Matter of fact, the fox. He used the analogy of the fox. The fox doesn't seem as threatening as the wolf because it's much smaller than a wolf, and it doesn't outright attack you. What the fox does is kind of nibble at you. It nibbles at you until before you know it, your ankles is like weak and you can't run as fast. And next thing you know, you like stumble on the ground. So it kind of nibbles at you until you're unable to defend yourself, and that's when you become the food for the fox. All right, so it's like kind of like Democrats. All right, so they kind of smile in your face, but then they make all these rules and regulations that kind of limits you in a sense. So when Obama was in office, now my mom loves Obama, so she might disagree with me, but ultimately he does a lot of stuff for the Jews. If I remember correctly, he gave $11 million in reparation to the Jewish people. But what about black people? Why is it that they get reparations? Then you got the Mexicans, Hispanic people, Mexicans. They got some form of reparations. And I believe Japanese people, I know they had reparations at once upon a time back in the World War II. But it seems like everyone else had some form of reparation, but black people didn't. Anytime was something given to black people, it became everyone's stick. So it's always like an undermining of black people, but they expect the black people's vote. So I see what Kanye West is talking about when he says that we should not be expected to vote Republican just because they want to vote Democrat just because they're Democrat. You gotta win our vote. You gotta earn it. I shouldn't be expected to do that just because I'm black. He also says a lot of stuff in his interview, which once again I agree with, and I'm gonna push forward. And I know this is gonna be a long video, but it is what it is. So I'm gonna see what else he has to say.
Because here's what I honestly think. I think you have an extraordinary mind. You have a number of extraordinary talents.
By the way, this right here, this noise is really irritating.
Musical genius. You're a fascinating public figure. What has been interesting to me is to watch the furore which has erupted in the last few weeks over a series of statements that you've made, which have caused, as you know, a lot of offence. And I guess before I get into them, I'm just curious as to whether you think there is a line for free speech. I completely agree with you that there is a war against free speech, that people are treading on eggshells all the time, terrified of expressing honestly held opinions in case they get cancelled. I think we're living in a really insidious era where liberals are behaving like fascists. So on that, you have absolutely my agreement. But my question...
I'm going to stop it right here because ultimately this video is going to be too long and I don't even know if it's recording. So I want to make sure that it's recording and then it's not too long. But I do want to make one statement, on this whole free speech thing. Free speech has never been free. It has never been free. Free speech has never been free. Alright, because since the dawn of this quote free speech, so-called free speech in America, people being killed for that exact same thing, prosecutor, persecutor, whatever have you. So even in the founding father days with John Thomas Jefferson, he during that time, they made it against reporters reporting saying anything wrong against the president. It was negative. It was a you could get arrested. You could get arrested for talking about the president. And that was back in Thomas Jefferson days. So free speech has never been free. You know, that's a slogan just like the land of the free, the home of the brave. You know, it's saying, how is it the land of the free when you got the most people incarcerated in prison? You know, as far as the country in the world. So America is the top country with the most incarcerated in the world, but yet we call ourselves the home of the free. Well, not the land of the free, and the home of the brave. And then you got a lot of people going to, you know, getting weapons, getting guns, and then you think that that's being brave, or they usually using that gun. You know, that's the first thing they use, and they just shooting people randomly, like whether it's going to a school of elementary school, shooting up kids, or shooting up grocery store defenseless people. You know, it's not really the home of the brave. It's not the land of the free. So it's just it's just a nice slogan. You know, when you talk about free speech never been free, but it's freer than it was, and I'll tell you that. And then you also gotta consider what kind of free speech, what is he using his platform for, Kanye? So, like, for example, Kanye, you know, someone might say, well, you know, the media likes to paint me in one picture and say that I'm crazy. Well, sir, all you gotta do is use your platform, which you had, but you, instead of using it to kind of enlighten people with positivity, you know, say for example what you're doing for your community, show them what you're doing for your community. You decide to use it to kind of slander people, to bring people down, you know, make people look bad, and pretty much blackmail people in a sense. Like Pete Davidson, for example, using it to attack Pete Davidson, attack the employees at your company. You use it to attack people. That's what you use your platform for. So it's like, and like, here's the thing about it. You know, what you want is very hypocritical, because you want a golden pass for you to say what you want, but everybody can't say what they want. You know what I'm saying? So like Facebook, for example, people like to make cracks and jokes on Mark Zuckerberg for you know, for the stuff that he says. Never mind. I was going to say he's been brought to the Congress because of, you know, free speech, but it's not. He wasn't really brought to the Congress for free speech. He was brought to the Congress before because of privacy. You know, I guess a infiltration on privacy. So never mind that. But ultimately, what I'm trying to say is, you have a tool to use at your disposal. Are you gonna use that tool to help people, or are you gonna use it to tear people down? And he decided to use it to tear people down, unfortunately. So that's just my whole take on Kanye. Not my whole take, but I gotta stop it right here, and cause for the sake of the video, and I'll talk. Maybe I'll do a part 2 next time. I'm not sure yet, but we'll see. Alright, so I'm about to log on out now.